G'day, and hope you're ready for this one. Covering off a real-world example of how Jinja 2 templating can take our router configs described in YAML and render Cisco-style configurations from that. We have a lot to cover with a bit of a steep learning curve. However, don't worry, as we touch on this further in episode 2 and episode 3, we will reinforce what you learn here. So new files are up in Git for season 6 episode 1. Please go on and check that out. Again, you can either cut and paste directly from the files themselves, such as opening up, looking at a template, for example, clicking and just copying and pasting, or you can just download the entire file or the whole repo. Personal preference, up to you. Once again, it's up to you to move your files around in your respective path. So I don't want to make this into a network how-to, but we look back at the lab and the host variables we've been using. We have the 3 routers, yes 3, and router 3 works when the power doesn't cut to it. And in season 5 we've configured some WAN interfaces to our mythical telcos in Telstra and Vocus. This time we configure a routing protocol over those interfaces again. You don't need to understand BGP, networking in general. Just follow along how we generate configs from Ansible's templating engine, well, how it uses the Jinja 2 templating language. And again, these are the interfaces that we're going to be using. We'll call them these the WAN interfaces, and that's the out-of-band interfaces that we used before, the 106.1, etc., etc. Okay. So, goals. Great feedback from subscriber Brian, who requested we clearly define goals for each episode. Thank you very much. As such, I have done that. So, goal 1. Update the host variables with some key value pairs that describes our border gateway protocol peers. It's not important you understand BGP, but follow how we capture it in code. We are going to touch on that a bit further. Goal 2. Develop a Jinja 2 template that will extract and loop over dictionary items. Such as our key value pairs, when one or more may exist. And goal 3 will be to push the outputs to a file on our local pop Linux machine, so we can peer review it. We don't want to go and just push it out. We want to peer review these files because we're great analysts and technicians. But before we do that, let's kick off back to our trusty virtual machine, our Pop! OS Linux. Let's create a new folder in our project path, and we're going to call this one templates. Hopefully you all remember the makedir command. And to simply do that, in home drive Ansible, let's makedir templates. And the reason we're going to do that is because very soon we're going to reference the path, the full path, using our template module. Excellent. Hope you've now knocked that one over. If not, press pause, knock it over, and come back. Okay, the complexity starts here, and I know what you're thinking. I'm giving up. This is too hard. Don't give up. It's not as hard as it looks. It's just a little bit to learn, and once you fathom that, the rest will just snap in place. I'm also happy to field any questions. Feel free to reach out. So, we've got a newly updated vars file for our CPE fleet, as we can see over here. You're seeing from the perspective of what CPE01, which is that guy. Where are we? Back to there. We see a dictionary of key value pairs, and these are specific to BGP in Telstra and Vocus. Once again, it's not important you understand how BGP works, but just look at how the data is defined. To start, we've got multiple BGP peers. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and fill in the blanks, if you will, in our configuration file. So let's actually have a look right now. So this is our template that we want to complete. We're starting off the template because we've got multiple BGP peers and we want to loop over and populate the variables for as many list items we have under BGP peers. So under BGP peers, we have a list of 2, Telstra and Vocus Hocus Pocus. We're starting this off with by declaring a loop. Here, this is a for loop, where it says for items in list do blah. You will note how we start this stanza and then how we close the stanza. Let's check the variables themselves. We start by saying the following is peer data and relative to BGP peers in the host var. We follow the green line and we can see that right there. Notice now our values are from the relative key peer. For example, we're looking at peer.peer underscore IP, which we would look here, peer underscore IP. It's easier if I point to that one because of the box. Peer.peer AS. As I said, it's all relative now to the key. Now the item, yes. I can see why it's hard to describe, easy to pick up. So we finish our loop with the end for. Excellent. So the keyword peer is arbitrary, but for good practice, it makes sensible. If you were doing one for VLANs, for example, you could say for VLAN in VLANs, you just got to make it sensible to you. And as I was saying, BGP peers has a list of 2 peers each with respective key value pairs. So what will happen is this will iterate over it twice. It will complete the stanza, all of this once, then it will go over it a second time for where we see vocus. Now, it's actually easier just to jump straight to the output. So we can see how the templating language has pulled the variables and assembled a text file. Let's progress to drafting it or running a play before you can come back to the explanation. Again, there's a lot to absorb, so don't panic too much. We're still pretty new in our automation journey. So let's go over and create our Jinja 2 template first of all. I've put it up in Git for you. Feel free to just copy and paste into your favorite text editor, which I'm assuming is Sublime, and save under our project path templates, that new folder you made. Then, as you can see, S6E1 underscore BGP underscore template.j2. You don't have to call it that, but it's just easier if you do. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go and create the play. The play itself is not that complicated. Once I log in. Okay. Whoops, what's that? Okay, we don't need that. We can just make a play right here. Sorry, as I grab my mouse, which has got a bit missing. So, first, we declare as my dog starts to bark a bit. This is indeed a YAML file. Let's give this play a name, which is Season 6, Episode 1 Playbook. And we're going to build some config snippets using Jinja Ninja 2. Does help if we don't type weird things. The hosts applicable, CPEs, gather facts. No, we do not want to gather facts. That is useless for this application. Connection is indeed local. However, it's insignificant for this one. You don't need to know why. It will blow your head a little bit. Tasks. What are we actually going to do? Name for this first one. I'm having a bad afternoon. Name is, let's see it going across the screen. Task 1. Build BGP config output to local file. That's fine, we can see that. Once again, it is a bad afternoon. We're going to invoke the module called template. Template has sub-arguments of source. And we have the source defined as where we just saved it. I will copy and paste to where I saved that because it's easier. Once again, if you're following along, specify the path. I'm doubting your name is Jay Brandis. So once again, substitute, or if you modified it, again, substitute. Our destination, so where do we want these to output? Here's something I did earlier. So we want this to output to our outputs folder here, but we would like it to give the inventory hostname.bgp as a file, which you will see very shortly. Now, this is where I'm going to quickly blow your mind a little bit, and I will talk about this. Delegate to local host. Now, before we play, I will tell you a bit more about this. So to perform a task locally, we can leverage the command delegate to. For example, if we want to create configuration snippets based on our inventory locally, we need to manipulate the behavior of Ansible so it doesn't attempt to try and execute this on the CPEs. We want this to execute locally, so to generate config snippets using the template module on our Pop! OS machine. And the delegate to local host, which can be done per task, achieves that. So it's going to make sense shortly when you see it in action. So our good friend, let's file, save as. Where are we? We at Ansible, plays. So play season 6. I was using caps. Season 6, episode 1 .yaml, and let's save. Okay, we are looking good. Someone should really stop me. I'm just so tired. I had a massive Reuben sandwich. It's showing. Okay, let's go over. We're in the pop step. Word 'em up. C drive, CD Ansible. Okay, Ansible dash playbook. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Dash playbook dash I, our path to the inventory inv.yaml, and our path to the play is plays, and this was play season 6. That should be able to tab it. So what we're trying to achieve here is we're hoping this will go out and create some configurations and execute them locally. It won't go out and try an SSH, so this should be pretty quick. Let's see it. What do we got? Yes. However, that happens more often than you think. As I take a little sippy sip. Oh, I don't even get a chance to sip. It was so quick. So if we go back to, it said, what's happened? It's run. It's done the first part. Built a configuration file built config to a local file for 2 nodes. Node 3, I won't go into that. What we should see though, under outputs, we should see 2 files called BGP. What will it be? The hostname.bgp. Oh, what do you know? What's CPO1.bgp? What's CPO2.bgp? So let's just open those bad boys up. Excellent. Now I do cover these here in greater detail. So if you were doing this at command line, if you did an ls-l star.bgp, in the outputs directory, you will see 2 new files. And as we said with the extension .bgp, if you look at the config outputs, you will see that we've pulled in specific details. Now this is what CPO2, that's what CPO1. We're pulling specific details here, and this very much looks like a Cisco IOS config, especially for router BGP, which is where you do all the BGP arguments. We've taken the skeleton of a file, we've populated it, and we've spat that out to a file. So as a technician or an analyst, you could really review this, and you could cut and paste it. You could then further use Ansible to deploy, but for now, I just wanted to demonstrate the power of Jinja 2 templating, especially with the loop command. It's not very fun to do one-off things, and I don't think Ansible is the best tool for that. But if you were to do multiple deployments and you just want to standardize your config, this is a great way to do it. Even if you only had one BGP peer, it still would have worked. If you had 100, it would just be a longer file. It will work. So based on that, that was a lot to take in. We looked at really defining infrastructure as code. You may have not understood you were doing that, but when you're over here looking at describing your BGP configuration, that's really your first journey to infrastructure as code. And you've got to think of ways to really define your infrastructure in kind of a best practices way. As you can see, your host of our files can really get out of sync from here. You can fill it with a lot of crap, but try and stay on track. And it's more meaningful to you. There is no best way of doing this. My switch file will look a lot different to my router file, which look a lot different to my SRX or FortiGate file. We developed our first Jinja 2 template, which was over here. And I think we've all understood the variables part. That was pretty easy. I hope I haven't thrown you off with the this is a for loop, 4 items in list. I'm hoping I've kept that up to date in your head. And as we do the next episodes 2 and 3, you'll see with regards to VLANs, interfaces, and a few things more. And I think it'll reinforce your learning. I don't think you'll be confused after that. And we briefly touched on the delegate feature. So we've got a lot more to do. Time is against us. You're about here in this, the effort to impact matrix. So let's see how we can push on with that. So everyone, again, thank you. We've gone a little bit over, and I'll see you on the next one.